Hi everybody, welcome to our independent professional development module. The content of this today has to do with our compliance monitoring process that's going to be coming up here in early March, and specifically the teacher interview portion of this process. So I wanted to thank everybody that was able to successfully navigate and submit the teacher survey that came from the Department of Education. There were a couple little tricks to get in there and get those submitted, and plus a lot of the questions seem very similar. But all in all, I thought it was I appreciate everybody taking a good look at that and doing their best to get those submitted. So in March, we have this cyclical monitoring process that comes up every 5-6 years. And it used to be a process that used to, was fearsome and something that was that we really didn't look forward to. The process has changed quite a bit and has been very positive in the last couple cycles, and they're looking for the good things that are happening around the state, and basically we get all the work done before they get here, and we submit a lot of things to them. They look at it, they look at the types of things that we're doing, the strengths of our program, and basically they're coming in for a couple days to validate that. So most of the work is being done before they ever set foot on our campuses or visit us through video conference on those days. So it's definitely a different and much more positive process. So what they're going to be doing is they've already taken a look, or we've already reviewed a lot of our documentation, and making sure that we've met recommendations and guidelines for those things. When they're on site, they'll contact some of our parents and guardians to see their thoughts, their recommendations, and feedback on our programs. They'll conduct some interviews with special education teachers and also teachers in the general education curricular areas, and you'll see they'll also be referring to regular education, general education curriculum, kind of interchangeably. So, and also be doing some brief classroom observations, once again to validate some of the things that we're writing in our plans and talking about doing here. So there's a random sample of students that they'll be doing all of these 5 steps with, and they're spread from K to 12. So I'd like to take the opportunity to talk about some of these things, some of the terminology that is always good to catch up on, even if we're discussing it every single day. Down at the bottom of the slide, you'll notice that there's some learn more and hopefully some active links that if you're interested in any one of these particular areas, you have the opportunity to click on those, and those links will take you to some further information. So the purpose of the teacher interview, whenever these team members come on site, they're looking for, do we know basically about our students, which we really do, and their particular needs and the types of programming supports that we provide. So once again, they're looking to evidence what those types of things are that we put in our plans. And probably heading into this, the one thing that we want to make sure, and I kind of put these pictures on here as kind of like man, these are the last people in the world I'd want to talk to. And just for that reason, sometimes when you think, well, there's strangers coming in the building, and I'm not happy with this at all. And this is a showcase event. It's we're going to be very, very welcoming, and there's no reason at all to feel anything other than we're just having a professional discussion with somebody. We're not being evaluated by a person who's interviewing you. So please remember that, and try your best to be, have that smile on, that welcoming, and we know what the questions are going to be ahead of time. This isn't going to be there. There's no secrets in this process. So, if I didn't mention it before, there are members of this compliance monitoring team coming in. Some of them are former educators, former administrators. Some of them are current administrators. Some of them could be parents. So there's only 3 or 4 coming, and the chairperson is from the Department of Education, the Bureau of Special Education. Talked to the gentleman, very, very nice guy, named Bill, and it seems like he's going to be he's going to make sure that this runs very smoothly, and seems like a really good professional to have leading this team and coming in to visit us. So a lot of the questions, when you see examples of the questions, they'll say that these are questions that are student specific. So you'll have there'll be a name of a student that they pick at random, one of the 10 to 15, and you may be thinking, oh geez, do I need to have the IEP with me of this student in my class? And that's not what the intention of this. Their intention is not to catch you up with a specific that you may not have memorized in a 50-page document. They're just looking for, have you had a chance to look at this IEP and see which components are important to you as a teacher, what's important to the student in their program, to make sure that they have the opportunity to progress as much as possible in your class. So definitely not looking for those specifics that are, am I going to have to refer to this document? Absolutely not. So as we're going through, I'm going to kind of smile and say, the answer to all of these questions is yes. That makes it really easy. So why have you been talking for 10 minutes, Mr. Diamond? Well, because I tend to do that, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more, but I'm only speaking to a lot of the lingo that we use every single day, and the speak in the special education world or educational world. Sometimes we have to even remind ourselves what those type of things are. So you could say yes with confidence. Okay. So I'm going to be going through these slides rather quickly. Once again, there'll be some links on the bottom if you want to learn a little bit more about these specific areas. And so I'll try to not read the questions verbatim and talk about those things. I'm sorry about some of the busy slides and my picture over part of the what was typed in there. Someday I'll get used to these systems. So one of the first questions kind of sets the tone. Are you familiar with this student's IEP in particular? So if I'm the student that's been picked, am I familiar with Bob's IEP? Do I know? Yeah, I know who this young man is. this old man is, and I know, you know, his strengths, his interests, some things that make it difficult for him to be successful in my class or access the curriculum. So those types of things they're looking at. Are you familiar with it? Yeah, I'm familiar with it because I get an input sheet, even if I haven't been to the meeting, which we'll talk about later. Also, it's not a big deal. But have I received some written input from that? And the support teachers are excellent at all levels about getting that information out to everybody who is in need of that, especially the areas that have to do with the classroom and instruction and assessment, the types of things that a student would need to be, you know, to have the best opportunities and for, you know, to progress. So we'll talk, you know, I want to, you know, just briefly touch on the IEP process. Many of you have had the opportunity to attend IEP meetings, and you know, maybe listen in. We've had video conferences. We've had all kind of unique meetings. But an IEP process, the flow of it is very helpful. So whenever you're being asked questions, you know, to kind of keep in the back of your mind, well, the IEP flows. It's like a story. You know, you begin with the student and where that student is, and the type of things that are going well and the types of things that they're working on. And then it moves into the goals. Well, what goal have we taken this information and what are we going to do to help them, you know, improve those skills? What kind of instruction do they need? What kind of skills do they need directly? And then what type of supports do they need in the classroom, in a general education classroom, you know, to help them while they're learning these skills? And then how are we going to evaluate that? So the flow of an IEP really does help whenever you're considering these questions, and just learning about what any student would need, and how responsive and excellent you guys are as teachers. We're very fortunate. So I did refer to the summary page that will typically come to you from support teachers. They'll give you information that you need, or after a change in an IEP or change in a plan. We like to get that information out to everybody. Or if there's a new concern, a new issue, we like to get that information out. And I know it comes in a variety of ways: email attachments, PDFs, all kinds of interesting ways we get information to each other, confidentially, obviously. And at any time that anybody wants to see a full copy of a document, you know, please let a special education teacher or specialist know. You know, sending confidential PDFs and things like that's very much more readily available for us, even at the special education office. You know, please let us know. So one of the things that you'll see in the questions, they say they interchange some words. I don't want to specifically get into that. When they're asking you, do you adapt? You know, do you modify? And sometimes you know, it's very easy to get those terms mixed up, and like I said, we have to remind ourselves now and again. But whenever they're talking about adapting or accommodating something, they're talking about changing it. They're talking about a different presentation, a way of altering it, but not taking anything away from it. Okay, and whenever they're talking about modifying something, modifying curriculum, modifying assessment, that's when they're talking about literally cutting away something. So modifying has to do with removing. Adapting or accommodating is just a way of manipulating and presenting something in a different format or style. I hope, not I hope, I'm very confident that the support teachers in any of the areas of academics or behavioral supports or speech and language, that they're helpful to you guys in as far as helping you plan for, well, how can I get this student to perform, or how can I provide them the best opportunity in this class, and help them planning, in accommodating, adapting tests, those type of things. And teachers have a variety of ways that they're able to work together. If they're fortunately able to co-teach together, time, resources, some of those things are not always available, but I know that people are very flexible and find positive ways to do that planning and to support one another whenever we're working with any type of student, and they're all very unique. So, are you and the special education teachers working together? There's collaboration that happens every day between teachers and professionals. It's something that is just it's always been a strength of this district and strength of the professional staff, and it's one of those things that we do very well. There's a couple questions that you'll see. Did you have the opportunity to attend the students' last IEP or their most current IEP? And you may not have, and that's okay. And with scheduling and having, we have absolutely, our substitutes are very limited. So there may be a chance that you're being interviewed and asked these questions and you did not attend that last IEP. That's okay. But they want to make sure that you have the opportunity to provide your input. The support teachers always will provide you that input form for an IEP or for whenever we reevaluate a student for supports and services, making sure that you have the opportunity to provide that input and provide recommendations. And they'll ask you if you did provide a recommendation, like, well, you know what, Bob here really doesn't need a modified test in English class because he's able to complete that full test within that time period, with all the answer choices and the writing and all those things. So that's not something that he needs. He doesn't need a blanket modification like that to be successful. He may need that in another class, but not in that English class. So that's just kind of a random example of something that we're talking about. So there's always the opportunity to provide feedback and input, not just at meeting time. And if you didn't attend a meeting, it's okay. I'm going to go through that one. I talked about that one. My slides are pausing here, so I'm going to see if I can get them back going again. Okay. Supports for school personnel. What those are, within the context of this question, supports for school personnel are the areas where you discuss, well, special education teachers and regular education teachers have the opportunity to collaborate and to talk, and to work on planning and making accommodations and those type of things. And that's an important part of creating successful programming, is having those supports in place. This could also mean that a student may need behavioral supports, so somebody needs to be available to be able to communicate with the team about behaviors that may be challenging. So that's something that when they refer to supports for school personnel, that's what we're referring to there. They'll ask about supplementary aids and services. Supplementary aids and services is a topic that we can spend a considerable amount of time on, but for our sake today, we're talking about some categories of supports and the types of things we can do to support any student, not just a student with an IEP or a specific need. So we talk about what we can do within the environment, or physically within the classroom, to help a student. We talk about who we can collaborate, who we can get together to collaborate to help a student with a particular need or needs. The types of instructional adjustments we can make, the type of accommodations, or maybe not. We're definitely not as crazy about the modifications, because the world really doesn't modify after we leave the school system. So reasonable accommodations and adaptations, but definitely not the modification. So I can use about the example of a driver's license or junior firefighter, certifications, things like that. Those are very big reasons why we try to not modify as much as students, unless they truly need it. We try to stay away from that. And also the behavioral, emotional part of planning that students may need. So to look a little bit deeper into supplementary aids and services, I do have some links there that talk about considering different areas, how to bridge a student's strengths and needs with the particular expectations and challenges of a general education course. Or expectations of the types of assessments that they'll take. So, please take, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that. I know that we do visit that during professional development from time to time, especially, talking about the major components of a process of determining what the best supplementary aids and services for a student are, and it's looking at things more specifically, looking at particular classes, looking at the particular strengths and interests of a student, and how those are going to combine, and how we can facilitate that process best. So they ask if in the most recent IEP meeting, did you recommend this? Was this acceptable? Once again, if you were not directly involved in that most recent IEP, it's okay to say I was not at the IEP. Okay, but it's very important also, though, that you were able to provide any input or recommendations. So this question talks about, was it discussed if this student could be educated in general education for the entire school day? Sometimes there are things that we don't say verbatim, but one of the main goals of our program is to basically work ourselves out of a job, in that there's always students who are going to need us, but as time goes on, as a student is progressing and becoming more independent and doesn't need as many of those supports, we do want to cut those down, just because that's as I said previously, what they're going to experience outside of the school system. So a starting point will always be to look at that end goal of can this student be in general education? Can they be out without any supports and services? So that is definitely something that that if it's not said verbatim, it's something that we always keep that as a we want to keep that as a starting point for our or a goal for our planning. And then they talk about removal and removal of a student from general education environment or class. It's kind of a negative connotation to that word, removal, and I definitely don't want to get into too many semantics here, but what they're really asking is, are there reasons for a student to spend outside of the regular education classroom for certain supports? And a lot of this has to do with whenever students are working on particular skills. Sometimes, and most often, they don't want to be with their peers in the middle of something to work on a specific skill. So those are the times that we really discuss and look at for if students need to spend time outside of the classroom, even in a busy schedule, we prioritize for that type of strategy and skill instruction. They move on to ask, if you were in that meeting, how did they discuss what times they would spend outside the classroom, and all of the things that they're asking, that if you were at the meeting, it just was a discussion among the professionals and the student and the family, whether those supports could be inside or outside the classroom. So they ask again about could the student be, was it discussed if the student could be educated in the general education classroom with only supplementary aids and services? And this is a little bit of a twist to the last question about being in general education the whole time. With supplementary aids and services are those things that all students can receive, all of those type of supports and interventions, and could this student be receive interventions without special education? Is that considered? And you can confidently say yes, that's always considered. We only provide what a student needs at that time. So is the student making progress within the general education curriculum? So, you're validating, well, yeah, they're benefiting from being in class with me. And then they'll ask you for a reason why. So a student may be able to work really well in your class with very limited accommodations. A student may be participating with you that even without being graded. So they're there for socialization types of reasons. And once again, since we're not really saying no for any of these, the interviewers would have a follow-up question. Well, if not, what are they not receiving in your class? I mean, it's not something that we even need to discuss, because we're all working together to make sure that these students are okay. So are the goals based on PA standards? Yeah, they have to be. Everything is, standard based. And there's so many, the academic areas, the behavior emotional areas, career readiness, everything's academically based. So that's something that you could confidently answer yes also. Specially designed instruction, all of those things that make a student's program individualized, even more than supplementary aids and services that we would do for any student. That's basically what we're referring to, especially design instruction. Are those things put into place? Are they meeting the students' needs? Absolutely. That's the function of the team and our collaboration together. Is the student's IEP appropriate to meet his needs? Absolutely, because if it isn't, then we would reschedule a meeting, get back together, and make any revisions that we would need to have. It's an ongoing thing. We just don't meet once a year, especially if a student has some things happening, positive or negative, that we would need to get back together and change. So they'll ask if you are working with a student that has behavioral, emotional type of needs. If a student has a positive behavior support plan, if appropriate, is this written in the IEP and is this followed? And you'll know a positive behavior support plan when you see it, because there's a couple extra pages in there, and they talk about a behavior of concern, and it's prioritizing what that behavior is that is keeping that student away, is becoming a barrier to their learning or barrier to their functioning. And then they look at the ABCs of behavior. What happens before? What are the antecedents? What is that problem behavior? Let's define it, looks like. And then the C, what are the consequences that are continuing and allowing that behavior to continue? And then there's a hypothesis statement and a plan and a goal to reduce or eliminate that problem behavior. So that's and once again, there's some links down there if you wanted to go and look more specifically at what a positive behavior support plan is, if that's something that you want to follow up on. Do you have sufficient time to collaborate with the special education teacher in order to meet a student's needs? This is always a question you're like, well, I really wish we had more time. I wish there was more time during the day. And that there are some natural constraints that are built in to collaborate, and people are very creative in finding those ways to meet and talk about what a student may need. They ask about training. What types of training have you received? And I think an important part about this also is what kind of training have you been given access to? So sometimes, especially in the days that we've spent outside of the same room together, sometimes we need to go out and find some information. If we've had a student with a particular unique need, we've gone out and researched those type of things, or we've talked to those people who can give us that information. So even down below, it's resources that you can go out and find those type of things. So even if we're not having that training sitting in an auditorium all together, which we can all pretty much agree that's almost the worst experience you can have, sitting for hours, right, in an auditorium just listening to someone talk, or to be sitting here watching this guy talk for 34 minutes, which I really want to wrap this up because this is an hour process. It'll take you 15 minutes to respond to the prompt. So they'll ask you some general questions. If you have a student in your classroom, do you have the opportunity once again to provide input to a team? And yes, you always are provided that opportunity. Do you receive training on how to differentiate instruction? I mean, this was a long time ago. We've been talking about differentiating instruction for a long time, um, you know, over a decade. We have looked at how to focus our instruction, and looking at competencies and what's going to be, what are the core, what are those core objectives that we need to be working on. So those are things that we don't need specific training on. That's been in the past. But again, some further links on what that type of what type that training or inclusionary types of things that we have that we could look at a little bit more in depth. As far as positive behavior supports, we have frequently looked at how to de-escalate crisis type of behavior. And we've had some targeted training. We've had some people doing nonviolent crisis intervention training, verbal de-escalation. So those type of things, and there's some reminders linked at the bottom of some of the things that we've done in the last couple of years. An interesting question that will show up: how do you address behavior in your classroom? As soon as something happens, do you boot the kid out and send them back to a special education classroom? Let's hope not. Let's hope that we're all, this is like interview question 101, right? How do you address that behavior? Obviously, if it's a significant, considerable, dangerous type of dangerous behavior, you always seek assistance, contact the office. But they're asking, is it commonplace for, if you have any issue with a kid, well, they can't figure out what's going on. Well, you know what, Bob, just get back to Paula Link's class. No, we don't do that. Okay. Does special education personnel work with you to help reduce negative behaviors? Once again, those de-escalation trainings and resources that have been provided in the last couple of years and actually available, linked to this site. This is something that we constantly work on, especially when we have students that are experiencing more difficulty during certain times and cycling. So it's one of those things that we do work on. If a student with AT, like you're supposed to immediately know what that is included in your class. So what are they talking about? Assistive technology, students with hearing devices, students with an FM device that maybe it's projecting your voice directly to their hearing aid. There's some incredible advancements in assistive technology. They're not just big devices anymore that are carried around, and but there are still some. We had a young man graduate that used to kind of take his magnifier around, those type of things. But those are things that, if there's something technology-wise that we needed to learn about, we would have people to go to get those supports. So if a person on the monitoring team comes in to your classroom, please remember it's going to be on a schedule. You'll know they're coming, and they're not there to evaluate your instruction or your delivery of accommodations. What they are there to do is to they're there to see that student in their learning environment and to see if there's consistency between what we say is going on and where they're at in the class. So if they walk in, say, and I'm sitting in the corner, facing the corner away from the whole class, that's not consistent with my plan. Okay, as ridiculous as that sounds, that's something that they have to ensure and look at. instruction? Is it with what's going on in their plan? Again, those are going to be pretty quickly just marked as, yeah, they're doing what they're saying that they do in their plan. Is the student have the opportunity to participate? Are they appropriately integrated? Once again, is the student sitting out in the hallway, or are they sitting in class? Do you have a table separate for students with IEPs, or are they have things that are just ridiculous? This is what we do, and we've done them here so long that they seem silly to even talk about. Setting ebb and flow. What the nice thing is, they're not going to be asking you these questions. This is what they're checking off whenever they come in. Is the classroom in the ebb and flow? Is the classroom on the roof or in a van outside? Ridiculous, right? Is the classroom designed for instructional purposes? Is it a closet? Is it I don't know. I'm getting a little silly here, going on to minute 40, which I want to wrap this up in the next couple minutes. But those are those areas that they're going to be looking at if they come in for a classroom observation. They shouldn't be asking you questions. They shouldn't be interrupting anything that you're doing. At most, they'll just want, you'll know they're coming, and you could, if you have a spot in the room where you want them, just to not be that disruption. Like here, you can kind of pull up here for a couple minutes, and the student is sitting up there in the blue shirt. That's basically what they need from you. And most of them will not be there for more than 10 or 15 minutes. So just to pull this all together, it was a lot to try to fit into a module like this. So what if you are notified that you will be interviewed as part of this process? The nice thing is that you know the questions that are coming, you know the support teacher, you know when this person will come in and observe those characteristics of the class and the student's program. You'll have time to peruse that student's IEP to see those type of areas, anything that you need to refresh on. And but most of I would say a majority of the time, this is the type of district and the type of strong teachers that they know the kids. And they've had a chance to work with these kids now for how many months, and they're finally here, they're finally back, that you'll find that you'll rarely need to refer to anything. You'll know the teachers, you'll know the students, you'll know the general specifics. That's completely that's not right, but you'll know the components of that student's plan, that you won't even have to read them, by any means off of paper. So, I hope that this gives you a good overview. Will provide you those questions. I'll absolutely provide some follow-up information. So if you want to, avoid listening to the old guy in the corner of the screen and just say, hey, just let me take a look at the questions. Or can I take a look at these questions with the support teacher, and can we talk this through before they come? That'll make things a lot easier. You could have saved your time with this. Well, yeah, that's I'm going to make sure that you do get that. And if you do have any specific questions about the terminology or what they're referring to, what they're looking for in a response, I'll be around with Mr. Kuczynski on Thursday. So some of you may have already watched this. Some of you may have turned it off. Some of you may be watching it after I talk to you with Mr. Kurczynski. But please let me know if you have any questions as far as the specifics to this. But once again, this is a positive process. You are these people are not above coming in to look down and see what you're doing. They're here, we've already told them what we do, and we've already showed them what we do. So they're just kind of coming in to put the stamp on it and saying, wow, they really got it right at Cambria Heights. So that is, an overview of what this process is going to be over the next couple weeks. Once again, please let me know if you have any questions. And the final part of this will be a Google form of some type that you'll be asked to respond to. To respond to a couple things, just to make sure that you've engaged in some of the most of the important concepts here. And I wish you guys a great day, and thank you for your time.